Psalm 100 from the Paleo Hebrew Scriptures. Make a loud noise. Shout for joy unto Yahweh the ever-living. Go to him before his face with a ringing cry of joy. Know him intimately and completely, for he, Yahweh the ever-living, is Elohayim. He has fashioned us, working by labor to produce us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the small cattle of his pasturing. Go to him, and to his gate with confession, thanksgiving, praise, into his enclosure with hymns of celebration. Cast forth praise unto him, kneel and place a gift before him. Prosper his name. For Yahweh is beautiful, kind, upright, fair and agreeable. His hasad, desire and mercy, zeal and kindness, endure unto time of long duration. For as far as the eye can see or perceive, to the edge of the horizon and beyond, and his faithfulness circles from age to age perpetually.
The divine conception of Isaac, or rather, how divine was the conception of Isaac and Sodom and Gomorrah. All that will be covered this week in the Torah portion. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley, coming to you bright and early on a preparation day from Barcelona. You may be wondering why I'm coming to you live at 9 a.m. Actually, it's 8:58 a.m. on the Eastern Seaboard. Wakey, especially for those of you on the West Coast, and forget about it if you're in Hawaii or Alaska, maybe you're insomniac or whatever. I don't know, but happy prep day, everybody. The reason I'm coming to you live is I'm in this apart. Hold on here. There we go. Let's get me straight in the middle of the camera. You may be wondering, who this family is behind me. I don't actually know. I'm in a stranger's apartment. They were kind enough to give it to us here in Barcelona. But last night I had an interview, brought on Hunter Tylo and Dr. Natalie Atwell from North Carolina. And it was kind of late at night over here in Barcelona. And the walls are paper thin. So even the floors, the ceiling, this is like you could hear somebody sneeze next door, if you know what I mean. And the neighbors weren't too excited about the conversation that was going on, what I was talking about, what they were talking about. There were some complaints from the people above, people below, and I want to respect my neighbors and love my neighbors. And it was kind of late. So I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do Torah portions tonight live. I'm going to, go ahead and just do it here in the morning, and you guys can pick it up when you guys want to watch it. So again, wakey, everybody. Hope everyone's doing good. And I'm getting ready to set sail. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to get back to the East Coast. It's been about 7 months traveling across Europe. I have so many stories to tell, which I have not been telling you. I have much research to compile, which I have yet to compile. I've compiled some of it. Let's get started with the Lord's Prayer. I'll read from the Standard, and then because these are the Paleo Torah portions, I'll read over here from Pamela's beautiful translation of the Paleo. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And then from the Paleo. Our Father, set apart as your name, and your royal dominion, your pleasure, your delight, you will exist in Shamayam and in Aratz. And give us our bread continually, and pardon our faults, our sins and missteps, in the same manner in which we forgive those who commit faults, sins, missteps against us. And all do not bring us into the hands of testing, but guard us from all evil. Amen. Now, if I'm stumbling in some of my words here, you must forgive me. I need a little bit more coffee from my, you can read that right there. I love New York, and I do love New York. I actually do. I just realized that for the first time in my life, I realized that I truly do love New York. Maybe it's the mug, maybe it's the coffee talking. Not the greatest coffee. Hopefully yours is tasting better this morning or this afternoon, whenever you're tasting it. I should have pointed this out before we open with prayer. This is Tuck 2. If you're not familiar with it, I am trying to build up a second backup channel in case this one goes down, in case I get thrown into YouTube jail. And I'm just telling you right now, I mean, I am out on parole on good behavior, but some of the things I'm planning to talk about in the future, I'm just letting you know there's a good chance I'll be taken down. So if I am taken down, I advise everyone to go over here, subscribe to this other channel, and I am putting up weekly these AI videos. Yes, they are AI. They are taking my work and summing them up in 20 minutes, actually better than I could in 3 or 4 hours of continual talk. So if you want something on your drive to work or while you're making a meal, it's a nice breakdown. If you can get past the AI, for some people, it's cringeworthy. You'll never get past it. It's not for everybody. Other people love it. I've had people telling me, hey, Noel, when are you going to put up? I took like a month or 2 off from putting up videos. They're like, when are you going to get to the next episode? So here's 2 new ones for you guys. And over here on the left, fresh in our stores, is the Paleo Joshua, freshly delivered, hot off the press from Pamela Glasgow. Pamela will be joining me sooner rather than later, to do a line for line read through the book. Not so much a study, but we're going to just read through the book so you can see her beautiful translation. Maybe I'll do it on the boat. I'm not sure how my internet reception will be at that time. It's going to be a 2-week boat trip across America. I'm returning to America just as the immigrants did for hundreds of years. That's how I roll. Let's get into it. Bereshith from the Paleo Hebrew, week 4. Genesis 6:9 through, that's not true at all. That was 2 weeks ago. Never mind, whatever. It's actually chapter 18 through 22. At least I got today's date right. October 24th, 2025. Here we go. Yahweh appears a third time to Abraham. Yahweh was again revealed to him at the oak woods of Mamre, or Mamre, when he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. Then he raised his eyes and looked, and saw 3 men standing opposite to him. And he looked and called to them from the door of his tent, and bowing to the ground said, Adonuya, if now I have found favor in your eyes, will you not come in unto your servant? Now, quickly point out that in some extra biblical texts that I have read, or other versions, it has implied that there's in parts, well, you know what? I'm going to save that. Let's keep reading. I need a little bit more from my I Love New York mug. Excuse me. Take a little water and wash your feet and rest under the wood, and take a bit of bread and refresh your heart, and afterwards proceed. Now, this is going to be directly contrasting what we see with Lot in the city of Sodom. Last week, if you followed the Torah portions, you will know that Lot separated from Abraham because he wanted private possession. He wanted his own house. He wanted to put his treasures in there and didn't really want to share with the others. And Abraham shares everything. It has, by longstanding tradition of Judaism, he had a kind of a really like a entrance, I think, on all 4 sides. And you see this in the Testament of Job too, where Job also had something similar. And it was to welcome people as they came in from any given direction. And it's also interesting to note that Abraham is parking it right outside of a very wicked city, Sodom. And so I imagine that as people are traveling to Sodom, as they're doing now, we have 3 individuals that are traveling to the city to personally investigate the crimes. We'll be covering those tonight. He intercepts them and he wants to tend to them and, feed them and give them water, give them a bath if they want, wash their feet, whatever, uh, sit down and keep them company. Amazing man Abraham was. And repeating myself here, take a little water and wash your feet and rest under the wood, and take a bit of bread and refresh your heart, and afterwards proceed. Perhaps it was for this you passed near your servants. And they replied, do as you have said. So Abraham also ran to the fold and took a fine fat calf and gave it to a youth who at once dressed it. You notice he didn't actually say that to them and then they said, do as you said. And he goes and does additional. He placed it before them and he stood opposite them under the trees while they were eating. They afterwards asked him, where is Sharaha, your covenant woman? And he replied, she is in the tent. He then declared, I will certainly restore you as at the period of youth, and there shall come a son from Sharaha, your woman. Now, Sharaha heard it from the door of the tent where she was behind him. Now, Abraham and Sharaha were old, advanced in years. It was not with Sharaha as women are. So Sharaha laughed in her apartment, saying, after I am wasted, will there be pleasure for me even when my Adon is old? Yahuwah consequently said to Abraham. Now, this has been long noted. I'm sure probably everyone listening to me now already knows the puzzle before us, that one of the 3 men, one of the 3 visitors, angels, if you will, Yahuwah. Now, most nations, different church groups will suggest that this is Yahshua in the flesh. And actually, I don't disagree with that at all. But I think most of my crowd by this point does understand my conclusion that Yahuwah is Yahshua or Yeshua or Jesus for you Greek fanboys out there, that they are one and the same. And I need to clarify that every single time. I need to repeat this because there's always that first person. No, I'm not saying that Yahshua is the Father. I am not a modalist. Okay, I'm not a modalist. I'm not I don't mind the word Trinity. I'm not a Trinitarian. I do think that there is a Father, Mother, and Son, and that they're in a Echad together. But I'm of the position that Yahuwah is the Son of the Most High, Allah Hayam. And so to say that Yahuwah is perhaps, I don't take this to be a voice from heaven. It could be a voice from heaven, but to say perhaps that Yahuwah is one of the 3 men visiting, that is to say that is also Yahshua visiting him, though he doesn't have the name Yahshua yet, or rather it's not revealed. Anyways, he says to Abraham, why did Sharaha laugh, saying, shall I suckle a child when I am old? Is it a too great thing for Yahuwah the ever-living to say, at such a time, I will return to you the period of youth and give a son to Sharaha? But Sharaha denied, replying, I did not laugh. So she straight up lies. I'm actually not laughing that she's lying, because that's a terrible thing to do. Just kind of laughing at the very human predicament of the people in the Bible. They're just so much like you and me. It's more like laughing at the irony that if we were placed in the story, we would very likely do the same things, make the same mistakes or worse. But Sharaha denied, replying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And that's interesting right there. Did you know that, of course, there's only 2 prime emotions. There's love and fear. And laughter, so she's obviously not loving in this moment. She's in fear. And actually, laughter is a form of fear. He, however, answered, yes, you did laugh. The men departed from there and faced towards Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to converse. And then Yahuwah, again, who appears to be one of the 3 men, to go on to Sodom, and he and Abraham remained behind talking, said, "Shall I conceal from Abraham what I am about to do? When Abraham is to become a great and mighty nation, and every nation of the earth is to be barak through him or blessed through him. For I have instructed him in order that he may command his sons and the sons of his house after him, that they must keep to the way of Yahuwah, the ever-living, and do right and justice, so that Yahuwah, the ever-living, may cause to come upon Abraham what he has promised to him." So Yahuwah continued, "Sodom or Gomorrah or Amaraha shriek, for their sins are many and are very grievous." Now, I want you to pay attention to what Pamela put there, shriek. How does it say this over here in the King James? Of course, I put this here side by side so you can compare while you read. It says here, and the Lord or Yahuwah said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. So I want you to pay attention to the shriek or the cry there, because we will be addressing that again, like I said, later. "I have therefore come down, and I will see what causes the shrieks that have come to me." When was the last time in the Torah that he came down for anything? Well, it was the Tower of Babel. Yahuwah personally came down. I don't know if he came down in the flesh. In this account, it seems like he came down in the flesh, didn't it? Actually, in the Aramaic Targum, which I don't have prepared to show you tonight because I have too much other material, I had to pick and choose. There's actually a great passage where Abraham actually feeds the three men food, because we know that he does that here, right? He prepares the meat, but the reason he does it, he kind of leans in and carefully observes them as they eat, because he wants to know, first of all, if they are angels, and secondly, if spiritual creatures like angels can eat food. So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood firm in the presence of Yahuwah. And Abraham approached and said, "Will you destroy the just along with the wicked? If there are 50 just persons within the city, will you destroy it and not raise your hand from the place because of the 50 just persons that are within it? Far be it from you to do as you have said, thus to slay the just with the wicked, and to make the just and the wicked alike. It is far from you. Will not the judge of the whole Erat, or the earth, do justice?" Now, as Abraham is saying this, I can actually identify with this. I don't know if you guys ever have prayers like this. Even when I'm live, sometimes I'll be saying something and I'll be like, you guys see me do it all the time. I'll be like, wait, that's not right. And I'll like readjust it and go, no. Like it's got to be something else, right? And I know Abraham, he's speaking this and he's going, in his heart, he realizes, he knows there's not 50 righteous people that are going to be found in the city. I wonder if the 50 people, if he's got these faces and names of these individuals, because as you know, when Lot broke off, if you followed last week, he took a lot of people from the camp with him. So this would be, he would know Lot's children and their, his wives, and they got married, and sons, and they got married to other women, and they have grandchildren by this point. Eliezer, he is his let's see, I think it's his granddaughter maybe that Lot married, which I think we may cover that tonight. So he knows all these people, and he's thinking, and then he's like, yeah, actually there's not going to be 50 people righteous there. Anyways, I digress. Yahuwah accordingly answered, "If I find 50 just men in the whole city of Sodom, then I will for their sakes take off my hand from all the place." Now notice here that Yahuwah is saying, like, conditionally. I find it really fascinating. He could have said in his all knowledge, being like, "Hey, Abraham, I'm just letting you know right now that there's not going to be 50 people. In fact, there's not going to be 30 or 20 or 10. There's going to be like one righteous guy there." He doesn't do that. And it actually gives us a glimpse into his nature. I mean, he's going there to investigate. He's sending the angels there to investigate. Why not just make a decree from heaven, right? Kind of interesting. Does he still do that today? Does he still send his angels down to, investigate the city of, New York? Here's the cries of New York, or pick your city, Barcelona, I'm in right now, Paris, London, San Francisco, You know what I mean? San Francisco, like, New Orleans or whatever. Does he still send his angels down there to investigate? And then Abraham answered and said, see now, I began to speak to my Adon, although I am but dust and ashes. If there should want 5 just persons of the 50, will you sweep away the whole city for want of 5? And he answered, I will not sweep it away if I find there 45. But he continued still to speak to him and said, if there are found 40 there, he replied, I'm sorry, I should have said 45 earlier. He replied, I will not do so for the sake of the 40. Still, he said, let not my Adon be angry now, and I will speak. If 30 are found there, and he answered, Yahweh answered, I will not do it if I find 30. And so Abraham continued, see now, I will dare to speak to my Adon. If there are found 20 there, and he answered, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. And then he said, let not my Adon be angry now, and I will speak once more. If 10 are found there, and he replied, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. Then Yahweh went to do what he had told to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his own place. So that concludes that chapter right there. That is what chapter were we on? Chapter 18. So there's some amazing things being contrasted here. One of the things I wanted to talk about originally tonight was salt, because of the pillar of salt and what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah. I decided to wait until we get into Leviticus or maybe even Numbers territory to talk about the covenant of salt. But it's interesting that, in the surrounding chapters, last week, we saw 2 covenants being proclaimed to Abraham. And then we know that there is a covenant of salt, and we see a destruction by way of salt. Of course, salt is alchemical. It's an amazing thing because salt can actually bring life, or it can destroy. Some people will say that all salt is a poison. There might be some holistic doctors out there that might come to that position. I don't really know. I've seen different opinions on this. I've seen that a little bit of salt is good. There's the argument whether we should salt meat for preservation or taste. And that's where the, holistic doctors come in and say, no, it's not for taste. It's just for, winter preservation, that kind of stuff. That being said, the kings of old, if they wanted to destroy like all out war, Grant or Sherman through Georgia style, they would salt the fields in a way that they could never grow on it again. And to this day, of course, Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed. But we see something else happening here. We're going to get into Abimelech. Last week, we looked at Pharaoh with Egypt when Sarah came in, Asharaha, she came in. And there was all of Egypt could not come at their women. There was a specific plague that was placed upon the men so that they could not come upon the women. We will see the same thing with Abimelech in a chapter or 2 away. And in all of this, amongst the destruction where you have Sodom and Gomorrah and these people being eternally cut out from the inheritance of Yahweh, where the inheritance is being given to Abraham in this country, Canaan. So many fascinating things happening, just contrast everywhere. We have the conception of Yitzhak, and I say divine conception. And I'm not here to like really, guys, I'm not here to trigger anybody. People get triggered by this. I did last time I went through these Torah portions 2 years ago, I wrote a paper on this, the divine conception of Yitzhak. And I was just fascinated by the idea of it. And I was really taken back by how many people responded very negatively to it. Now, the great thing about this channel is that I love to bring on people with very different points of views. Over the last couple of weeks, I brought on the very wonderful and humble Troy Miller. I really, really like that man. I was pleased to have, I would just love to sit down in person, over beer and just talk to Troy Miller. Like, that's the kind of relationship I feel with him. And I love to be able to talk to somebody who I don't completely agree with their positions, and that's okay. I had people coming to this channel and they're saying like, Noel, like you need to, strike back. You need to argue against this position that he gave on the lunar Sabbath. You need to, debunk this and stuff. I'm like, that's actually, and then other people are like, they're stressing how like there was an argument. There was no argument whatsoever at all. If people want to state there was an argument in the sense of like you present your point of view / your argument, yes, there was a presenting of an argument of which I did not come back at. I just, I was asking questions to kind of get the conversation going and try to kind of pick his brain, so to speak. But that's not what we do here. I'm not really interested in debates. I might host a debate someday, I guess. Try that out. But I'm not interested in debates. I just love different points of views. And the point of all of this here is that if you are and let me just back up. People are like, Noel, why don't you give the other side? Well, actually, I do every single week, guys. It's called the Torah portions. I give these on Fridays, on prep days, going into the Sabbath, whenever Sabbath starts for you, either nightfall or the morning. And I regurgitate that week after week after week, or I should say I certify it. So I don't know how I can better give that position of 7 day of continual Sabbath. Anyways, my point here is that what I'm about to present to you, if you disagree with this, that's okay. That's okay. I don't even know where I completely stand on this. All I can do is present to you what I find. So let's get into the divine conception of Yitzhak. And by this, what I mean by this is that it is very possible that Yitzhak is not the result of Abraham's seed. Dun, dun, dun. Just now, somebody is, flinging their fist against the computer screen or the TV. I could feel the steamroller weight of people's breath upon me. And so what this would imply is that the divine conception of Yahshua HaMashiach is a repeat event. It's something that, you have these events in history, these interactions where Yahuwah personally intercedes to course correct humanity. So let's start out just with a couple we've looked at over the last few weeks. The first here is, this is a reading from First Enoch, and this is a reference to Noah. Noah, of course, would be one of the divine interventions, almost angelic intervention in history. And after some days, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore a son. Now, this here specifically, I want to make clear, is that Noah did come from his father and his mother. It makes that very clear right here. You can't make that clear with Abraham because it actually never says that he conceived a child with her. It says that all the time with Adam and Eve, with Abel and Seth, and it says that with all the patriarchs going all the way down and so on and so forth. It doesn't say that with Abraham and Sarah. And his body was she bore a son, and his body, Noah's body, was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose, and the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was very bright. When was the last time that happened with a home birth or in the hospital? And thereupon he arose in the hands of the midwife, opened his mouth, and conversed with Yahuwah of righteousness. So now he's not only, his skin's not glowing, he's opening his eyes, and he's like, it's like a light bulb, just illuminates the whole house. His eyes are like candles, I guess. Not only that, he's like talking now. He just opens his mouth and starts conversing with Yahuwah. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled. I think a lot of fathers, when they see, there's a saying that a man doesn't become a father until the baby is born. Whereas, a woman becomes a mother when she, when the child is in the womb. At some point when the child is within the womb, within days or weeks or whenever she starts feeling the changes in her body. I remember the first time that my son was born. I had twin sons, but when the first came out, and I caught, he was at home birth in California. I pulled him out, I caught him, pulled him out, handed him to a midwife to clean him out and clean him up. And then I remember when the midwife handed him back to me and I held him, and the first words out of my mouth was, I don't know how to hold a baby. I said that out loud and everyone looked at me, and I didn't. Like, I was so afraid of this child. But, unlike me, Lamech actually, he fled from the house. He ran, tail tucked between his legs, like, I can't deal with this baby. And I guess I can't blame him. I mean, if my baby were to start, having like laser beam eyes come up at me, I might run too. Who knows? Well, he came to his father Methuselah, and he came into him. He said unto him, I have begotten a strange son, a strange boy. That's one way to put it. Diverse from an unlike man, and resembling the sons of the Elohim or the Elohim of heaven. And his nature is different, and he is not like us. And his eyes are as the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious. And it seems to me that he is not sprung from me, but from the angels. And I fear that in his days a wonder may be brought on the earth. So here's another contrast, of course, with the Watchers that came down and created giants. And here he has his own kind of Watcher baby, in a way. And now, my father, I am here to petition thee and implore thee that thou mayest go to Enoch, our father, and Enoch would be in paradise by this point, and learn from him the truth, for his dwelling place is among the angels. That's First Enoch 106. Here's another passage that comes from the Genesis Apocryphon, Dead Sea Scrolls, also known as Tale of the Patriarchs. You'll see the same story pretty much fleshed out here. Then I considered, this is Lamech speaking in the first person. Then I considered whether the pregnancy was due to the Watchers and the Holy Ones, or should it be ascribed to the Nephilim, and I grew perturbed about this child. Then I, Lamech, became afraid and went to Batnosh, my wife, saying, Declare to me by the Most High, by the Lord of greatness, by the eternal King, whether the child comes from the heavenly beings. Now, when I went into the Anunnaki literature, the Sumerian text, I actually sourced Batnosh. The name is pretty close, which is pretty crazy because you don't find out the name of Noah's mother at any other source except from this and Sumerian literature. Everything will you truthfully tell me, whether ... you will tell me without lies. Swear by the eternal King until you speak truthfully to me and not with lies. Then Batnosh, my wife, spoke with me forcefully. She wept and said, O my brother and master, recall for yourself my pregnancy, marital relations, and my breath within its sheath. She's basically saying, like, look, dude, you were there for the conception. I'm just letting you know that, like, it was a good time. We had a good time. Just recall it. Can I truthfully tell you everything? And then I was perturbed even more. When Batnosh, my wife, noticed that my face had changed its expression, then she gained control of her emotions and spoke with me. She said to me, Oh, my master and brother, recall for yourself my pregnancy. I swear to you by the great Holy One, by the ruler of heaven, that this seed is yours, that this pregnancy is from you, that from you is the planting of this fruit, and that it is not from any alien or from any of the Watchers or from any heavenly being. People get so perturbed at the term alien, and I actually use alien. I had this discussion with my wife several times. She's like, why are you saying alien? There's no such thing as aliens. I'm like, yes, there are aliens. I'm not talking about the Copernican revolution, but an alien can be from a foreign national entity coming over. They can be an illegal alien. You don't hear that term much anymore because the liberals, they want to obviously, bring in the illegals to vote, so they don't like calling them aliens. But an alien can also be a spiritual entity as well. I have no problem calling them aliens. Why has the appearance of your face changed like this upon you? And why is it disfigured and your spirit dejected like this? For I tell you this truthfully. Then I, Lamech, hurried to Methuselah, my father, and communicated all this to him, so that he might consult Enoch, his father, and come to know everything with certainty from him, since he is loved and favored by Allahayam and with the holy ones, has his lot been apportioned, and hence they, Allahayam, and the angels reveal everything to him. When Methuselah heard these things, he hurried to Enoch, his father, to learn from him the truth of the whole matter, his approval, and he, Enoch, had previously gone to Parvaim. I've sourced that as well. That's, but that, again, it appears to be wherever paradise is. There he found Enoch, his father, and he said to Enoch, his father, "O my father and master, I have come to you, and I say to you to not be angry with me because I have come here," so on and so forth. But that is a source referencing, of course, Noah, backing up what we have already read in Enoch. Last week, I'm not going to go through all this again. We then saw another divine intervention in history. And of course, again, I've looked at this Noah passage. I've considered it dozens of times, and the only conclusion I can come to is that there was some sort of angelic intervention. Yes, it was his father's seed and it was his mother's womb, but from a pre-existence perspective, there was some highly divine being that interceded in history to be Noah. That's the only thing I can come up with according to those texts. And I could read you more in that investigation, but this comes from 2nd Enoch, and we saw that Noah's brother's name was Ner, and he had a wife named Sopanema. And it says this, that Sopanema was in the time of her old age. This is before the flood. And on the day of her death, she conceived in her womb. And Ner the priest did not sleep with her. So this is just straight up telling you, because people would assume that he did. And it's like, we're not going to beat around the bush here. Look, not that she was a virgin per se, but nobody slept with her in the time period that she conceived and even gave birth. Nobody knew her from the day that Yahweh appointed him to serve before the face of the people. So according to this text, I don't know how long he was in service. When Sopanema knew of her conception, she was ashamed and felt humbled and concealed herself all the days till she brought forth, and no one of the people knew. And of course, when her husband finds out Ner, he's really upset to the point he wants to do damage to her. He in his heart, he's thinking like he might even kill her or do something rash. And he's like, "Be gone from me, woman, before I do something rash." She dies, child comes out. It's like this amazing baby that sits up in bed and starts talking. Again, this is the first Melchizedek. I covered this last week. You can see that video. So there's another divine conception or intercession in history. And then we move forward to the infancy Bezorah of Matthew. And of course, the infancy gospel of Yaakov, that'd be James. I've covered these many times, but you can see right here that when the same thing happens with Miriam and she gets pregnant, she's like, Joseph comes in, he's just shocked. He's like, "What in the world happened to my wife? Who beguiled you?" And she straight up references the Watchers and is like, "Look, I know that this happened to the women back in Genesis, and the Watchers came down and seduced them, but I'm telling you right now, this is not a repeat of that event. I can't explain it to you. All I know is there's a child in my womb." So I'm building this case up here let's see the contrast here in Bereshith in Genesis. In chapter 20, it says this, 20 verse 17 through 18. "And then Abraham appealed for Abimelech to Allahayam, and Allahayam made the woman of Abimelech fruitful, and his servants as well, and they gave birth to children, because Yahuwah the ever-living had sterilized those of the household of Abimelech on account of Sharaha, the covenant woman of Abraham." And then we read this in Genesis 21, verse 1 through 4. "Yahuwah the ever-living afterwards effected with Sharaha what he had promised, and Yahuwah did for Sharaha that which he had said." Again, it says nothing about Abraham here. It's clearly Yahuwah doing this through Sharaha. And Sharaha, conceiving, gave birth to a son to Abraham in his old age in the way that Allahayam had promised him. In the way, right? So there's a mystery happening here. Let's keep reading. This is what Jasher and Jubilees have to say about the same event. And it was at that time, at the end of a year and 4 months of Abraham's dwelling in the land of the Phalashathuyam, or in Geraraha. Excuse me while I take another drink of coffee here. Stand by. Recharged. That Allahayam visited Sharaha, and Yahuwah remembered her, and she conceived and bare a son to Abraham. So here it is directly in Yahuwah personally visiting her. Notice here it's not the Ruach HaKodesh. It's personally Yahuwah. And so the takeaway, of course, in all of this is that to be a child of Yitzhak, or really a child of Israel, that Israel, of course, as you know, is Yaakov, the son of Yitzhak, is a spiritual people. It was a people personally created by Yahuwah, who I believe is Yahshua, and not a genetic people per se. Yes, I mean, obviously, more than likely, every single one of us are somehow related to Abraham through Yitzhak. So this is what Jubilee says right here, Jubilees chapter 16. And on the new moon of the 4th month, we appeared unto Abraham at the oak of Mamre, and we talked with him, and we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah, his wife. So again, it speaks nothing of Abraham going into her. It's just saying that you will receive a son through Sarah. Like I said, in the same way that we could see that that Noah's wife was, say, attributed to having a Ham, even though Noah had multiple, at least another wife that had Ham, and she died before the flood. And again, we're going to see this contrast in, like, it explains itself in the story, in this Torah portion, because we're going to see the same thing happening with Hagar in the story. So Jubilees, then jumping ahead to verses 12 and 13 of Jubilees. And in the middle of the 6th month, Yahuwah visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. It's really weird wording, guys. If you really want to push out there that it was Abraham that did. I know that Yahuwah opens wombs. Like, I know that. Like, my twin sons being born was, and my daughter Rivka too. Totally Yahuwah opening the womb of my wife, and it was a miracle. It was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I remember kind of like Batnosh's wife speaking to her husband. I remember being there, if you get my drift. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time of which Yahuwah had spoken to Abraham, on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Yitzhak was born. Moving on to the divine conception in the writings of Abraham. This is what it says. And Yahuwah appeared unto me in the plains of Mamre, and he said unto me, behold, Yishmael shall not be your heir, neither Eliezer, for Sharaha will I bless, and I will give thee a son of her. Then I fell upon my face before Yahuwah, and I rejoiced, and I said unto him, O Adonai, it is a wondrous thing that this promise should be fulfilled when I am 100 years old, and Sharaha is 90. And Yahuwah said, prepare thine heart to receive it. And here's what I want you to see. So I guess here everybody has to prepare their hearts to receive what Yahuwah is about to speak to all of us, as recorded here in this dialogue to Abraham. So prepare thy heart to receive what I'm about to say. And he told me many secret things concerning the conception of the child, which are great mysteries to the unenlightened. But the elect shall know them, and I rejoice therein. I'm regretting now, because I love talking about preexistence, and I have whole documents on this. I'm actually regretting not showing you the passage right now where it declares that Yitzhak is actually like older than Abraham in terms of preexistence. Really interesting. He came afterwards. He was designated to be born on the earth through Abraham one generation later, or I should say through Abraham and Sharaha, but he's actually older than him. Here is the divine conception and Philo. Now, this one is really where it hit home with me, because Philo was, or Filio, but he was like a top-notch rabbinical Jew of the first century. And so we were actually talking about this the other night with when Troy came on. We were talking about the lunar Sabbath, and he was also a lunar Sabbath keeper. That actually stunned me. I did not know that. Nevertheless, you can agree with this or disagree, but this was a major view of the first century. In fact, most the historians who have looked at this, very few have come to the conclusion that the Jews must have dropped this entire Yitzhak divine birth thing because of Yahshua. Because all of a sudden now Messiah is born from a quote unquote virgin birth, and it's this big deal. And the Jews are like, yeah, we're just dropping this with Isaac. We're not going to talk about this anymore. This is what he says. When happiness, that is Yitzhak, was born, she says in the pious exaltation, Yahweh has caused me laughter, and whoever shall hear of it shall rejoice with me. Now, this is contrasting the fact that she laughed to scoff at, really mock the idea when Yahweh personally says she's going to have a child. And then she basically calls him laughter because she is laughing out of joy that he is born. Open your hearts, therefore, O ye initiated. So, you got the sense here of many secret things concerning the conception of the child that the enlightened, the great mysteries that the enlightened will know, according to the writings of Abraham. And so Philo is basically saying the same thing, that the quote unquote initiated will understand this and receive the most sacred mysteries. Laughter is joy, and the expression has caused is equivalent to has begotten, so that what is here said has some such meaning as this: Yahuwah has begotten Yitzhak. That is what Philo believed, that he was personally begotten by Yahuwah. And no, this is not a repeat of the Watchers at all. I don't believe there was any intercourse involved. I don't believe Philo is stating that either. This is what we read in On the Cherubs 45. Just like you can't say there was, intercourse with, the Virgin Mary. When you say Mary was born of a virgin, nobody says, what are you saying? There was intercourse? Nobody says that. But I have people telling me, what are you saying? He had intercourse? No, that's not what it means. That's not what it means that he was begotten of Yahuwah. On the Cherubs 45, this is again Philo here talking. And I will bring forward as a competent witness and proof of what I have said the most holy Moshe, for he introduces Sharaha as conceiving a son when Allahayam beheld her by himself, which means Abraham was not in the tent. Remember, he goes in the tent alone with her. She stays. She doesn't come out of the tent. She was behind Abraham. Abraham's facing Yahuwah, and then he goes into the tent with her, but Abraham stays behind, which is very scandalous for even today, but especially for the Mideast culture and back then. But he represents her as bringing forth her son, not to him who beheld her then, but to him who was eager to attain wisdom, and his name is called Abraham. So the son was beholden to Abraham, though it is not his seed, according to Philo. Now I'm going to dig into Paul here and see if, amazingly, time and again, Paul we read a lot into Paul today. Paul's one of those guys where you have to really break it down and try to get a first century understanding as to what he's talking about. He's a full Torah guy. We've heard so much propaganda about he's anti-Torah and people can't read anything, but the Torah is done away with when they read Paul. And I think that would just cause Paul's like head to spin to hear that. But here's a couple quotes from him, which seems to tie in to this whole theme. And I say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The first comes from, actually, they both come from Galatians. Chapter 3, verse 7. Therefore know that only those who are of faith are sons of Abraham. And he develops his point here, moving on to chapter 4, 22 through 23. It is written that Abraham had two sons, one by a slave woman and the other by a free woman. So we know that that's Hagar and Sarah. One, the child of the slave, was born according to the flesh. So again, Ishmael, born according to the flesh. We're going to see where this, this plan we saw last week, where Sarah handed her maidservant over to the daughter of Pharaoh over to Abraham, said, have a child through her. The son that comes from her will be, I will create it to be my child. It will be our child. So this was the child that was born according to the flesh. And I think what's happening here is Yahuwah is like, look, I am creating a nation that is going to be like the stars in the firmament. They're going to be so great a number. You could only count them if you could count the grains of sand along the shore. And this is going to be a spiritual people. It's going to be a people with a circumcised heart. Remember now, Ishmael has already been circumcised according to the flesh. And of course, circumcision of the flesh is a command. Nevertheless, that is something men do, and it is only Yahweh, or you could even say our Father in heaven, Allahayam, who personally circumcises our hearts. And it's the same thing from beginning to end. He creates the people. He creates Israel. It is not a genetic people. It is a fully spiritual people. So finishing this thought from Paul. One, the child of the slave was born according to the flesh. The other, the child of the free woman, that would be Sharaha or Sarah, was born through the promise. Born through the promise of what Yahweh personally said on his way to Sodom and Gomorrah. Continuing with our Torah portion, we're in chapter 19, the destruction of Sodom for sin. You guys still hanging in there with me? How many people are going like unsubscribe, click. Why won't this thing unsubscribe? Oh, believe me, YouTube will unsubscribe for you when it comes to my channel. You might want to check that, by the way, because I have people coming and tell me all the time, no, I see you live right now. I thought you quit. I thought you were done. I thought you retired. It's like, no, I'm here every week. That's, how shadow banned I am. So if you cease seeing me, before just assuming that I'm just retired, that I've hung up the hat, please do check to see if I'm still online, because most people are not seeing my talks anymore. And two of the messengers came to Sodom at evening when Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom, and Lot saw and rose to invite them and bowed his face to the ground. So notice the same thing happened. Abraham goes out to meet the visitors. Now there's only two of them with Lot. There were three with Abraham. And he's like, look, what can I do for you? Can I feed you? Can I wash your feet? You want to sleep the night? You want water? Anything you want. Like, I'll sit down and converse with you. You're my guest. As long as you stay with me, you're my guest. And Lot does the same thing here, indicating his righteousness. He rose to invite them and bowed his face to the ground and said, see now, my good sirs, turn aside to the house of your servant and rest yourselves and wash your feet and quench your thirst, and then you can proceed on your journey. But they replied, no, for we must go further. Then he pressed them much. So they turned with him and came to his house, and he made them a banquet with unleavened cakes, and they partook of them. So this unleavened cakes, it seems to imply that this is the Feast of Unleavened Bread when this happens. I think it might actually talk about that in Jubilees. I don't have that source in front of me. Now, Pamela's translation here in the Paleo differs a little bit from the King James, and I want to read to you what it says here. They said, "Nay, but we will abide in the street all night." Now, that right there is a very strange and peculiar thing to say. Why would they want to abide in the street all night? Why not get a hotel? They hang in, snooping around in back alleys and, semi-seedy streets and behind trash cans, trying to like on a stakeout or something like that. They're kind of doing that. And when we read the Jasher account, if you've never read the Jasher account, it really gives context to that. Anyways, Lot pressed them much, so they turned with him. They finally agreed, okay, fine, we'll go with you, and came to his house, and he made them a banquet with unleavened cakes, and they partook of them. It was not yet time for sleep when the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, from youths to old men. In fact, all the people came from every extremity of the city. Somebody sold them out. I think that, they probably got to Lot's house pretty safely. And one of Lot's relatives, I think it was one of his in-laws in one of the extra biblical books, sold him out through one of his daughters. And they called out to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may have sexual intercourse with them." Lot, however, went out to them to the porch, and the doors were closed behind him. And he said, "My friends, do not commit such wickedness. Look now, I have 2 daughters. No man has had sexual intercourse with them. I will bring them to you, and you can do to them whatever you like. Only to these men do not do such a thing. They came to the shelter of my roof." Now, this seems to be a really strange contrast here. I know people have a really hard time with this, and I have to admit this is one of the passages of Scripture that I have a really hard time with. Not in the sense of like, oh, I don't believe the Bible. I believe that the Bible is true. I believe that Yah's word is true, but just Lot's actions here. Was this ordained by Yah or not? It's interesting because he says like, well, look, these angels, these guys came, they're under my protection. Now his daughters were too. They were under his roof. The only thing I'm not justifying Lot's action. If anybody out there has figured out this puzzle and is able to justify the situation, please do tell, because next year when I give the Torah portions again, I would love to explain to you why he did this. But the only thing I can say without justifying his actions is that Lot knows that he has broken the laws of Sodom. He actually has by bringing these angels into his house. He's broken the law. They're demanding these men now according to the laws of the land. And he's like, look, I broke the law. So to make this up for you, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, here's one of my daughters. I was saving her for marriage, but I guess I'll just make her a common woman. And you could have my daughter exchange for these men who are under my protection. Again, not justifying that, but there is, a bit of the understanding of legality there, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, recompense, that kind of stuff. But they replied, "Be off with that. This fellow came here a stranger, and he enters into the controversy, passing judgment, making decisions. Now it shall be worse for you than for them." Now, one of the main, critiques or the conclusions out there about Sodom and Gomorrah while they were destroyed is for homosexuality. Now, homosexuality is an abomination, and it's disgusting that they wanted to do it to these angels. And whatever it is to be worse for Lot, like, I don't want to know. I really don't want to go there visually. And obviously, these angels were like, dang, it's worse than we thought. But the reason that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, I believe, wasn't because of the abomination of homosexuality per se, but because they passed laws that made it illegal to be obedient to our Father in heaven. Capiche? Got it? we have gotten very dangerously close to that recently with recent events and over the last decade, where we started seeing these laws getting passed that made it illegal to, do what we knew what was right. And I think that in those incidents, when that happens, where mankind, not that they allow evil to happen, and that's bad in itself, that's evil in itself. There's a lot of evil that the governments of the world, including my own government, is allowing to happen. But should any governments make it illegal to be righteous, that's when it's like, look out, because if their cries reach to heaven, Yahweh is going to roll up his sleeve. Then they rushed toward the man Lot with a vengeance and attempted to break the gates. But the men put out their hands and brought Lot to themselves into the house and closed the gates. And they struck the men in front of the house with blindness, from the youngest to the oldest, so they could not find the doorway. I want to see a situation. I would like to know what would happen. What would these angels have done if the men hadn't rushed them and Lot really went through with delivering his daughter? Like he grabs a daughter and she's like, no, Dad, no, she doesn't want to be a common woman. Maybe she's being obedient to him. I don't know. And he's pushing her through the door and flinging her out to the courtyard. What would the angels have done? At what point would they have interceded? I would have liked to have seen that story. Nevertheless, that's not what we got in history. What we got was the men charging to try to break down the gates. And when I imagine the gates, traveling all through Europe, you see these very old communities where there's these houses, but then they have this like little narrow courtyard right in front of it. We have these in Charleston too, by the way, and then they'll have a gate right there, like right on the street. So I think that they're trying to break down the gate to get into the courtyard at this time. Not sure if they're trying to get into the house yet. Then the men said to Lot, now who is with you here, relative or son or daughter, or anyone that you have in this city? Let them get out from this place, for we shall destroy this place. For its great shriek has come before Yahweh the ever-living, and Yahweh the ever-living has sent us to destroy it. Lot therefore went out and spoke to his relatives, to those who were to take his daughters in marriage, and said, come, let us go out from this place, for Yahweh the ever-living will destroy the city. But he existed a jester in the eyes of his relatives. Isn't that amazing that, when you try to warn people about the wrath or the potential wrath to come for the disobedient, the people just, your own family, the very people who you think are, religious and they're, spiritual, whatever, they just look at you like this blank face, like, what are you, an idiot? It's like, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, we're really going to be judged for our sins. That's kind of when it hits the fan, huh? Where the belief hits the fan. When you tell people they have to actually do something out of obedience or else. So when dawn arrived, the messenger said to Lot, get up, take your covenant woman and your two daughters and go out, for the crimes of this city are completed. But he hesitated. So the men seized hold of his hand. Man, even Lot's hesitating. That I say this every year. It never ceases to surprise me. Like I know that like Lot's wife is going to turn around and that she is like, she's not ready to give up the city yet. She stands in the blast zone and she's, taken out. It always surprises me every single year when I read this and like, dang, Lot is like staying behind and the angels have to physically grab him and haul him out of the city. So the men seized hold of his hand and the hand of his covenant woman and the hands of his two daughters due to the chesed of Yahweh towards him, and brought them out and placed them outside the city. And when they had brought them out, they then said, fly for your life. Look not behind you and delay not in all the plain. Take flight to the mountains. Take yourself there. But Lot answered them, O my Adon, let now your servant find favor in your sight and increase the kindness you have done to me to enliven my nephesh. For I am not able to escape to the hills before the disaster will overtake me, and accordingly I shall die. And see, there you go right there, right? Like there was like no time at all. It seems like however long Lot's wife was standing there, it was just, 10 seconds too soon, right? She's standing in the blast zone. See, now this city, it is easy to escape there. In a little time, I can escape to there. Is it not a trifle? And my life will be preserved. So one replied to him, yes, I will accept your presence. Also, for this thing, I will not destroy this town on behalf of which you have spoken. Be quick to escape there, for I am not able to do the thing until you arrive there. He accordingly called the name of the place Zor, or trifle. And I often wonder if in the angels, because we see this. I already brought up the strange case of Lot handing over one of his daughters, or maybe both of his daughters, in exchange for these two men. Well, here you're seeing the angels say, yeah, you can go to this one. We were going to destroy the city, but now we're not going to destroy the city so that you can stay there safely. And I often wonder if they were supposed to do that. Like, did the angels fail in their commands to spare these cities when they were supposed to destroy them? Now, again, there's going to be some people out there listening. You're not going to like hearing that. And from what I have read of the Hebrew mindset through ancient Hebrew extra-biblical books and so on and so forth, the Aramaic Targum is a great source, is that angels, Enoch is another great one too, that angels can also break commands. They're not perfect. They can actually break commands. And we'll get there eventually in the Aramaic Targum, where Yaakov is having the vision of the angels going up and down the ladder, hence Jacob's ladder. He actually sees these two very angels, that they are finally ascending up to heaven again. They were stranded on the earth. They could not return to heaven. They were given a command. They were on a mission, and they failed this mission. We're not given the specifics on what they failed, but this is the only thing I could find contextually where I'm like, I think that they were supposed to destroy the city, and Yahweh is like, why did you spare the city? You could have given it like 5 more minutes or something. You could have waited till Lot got a little bit further and destroyed the city. That's my only guess. Discuss. You guys can discuss that and see if you come to a different conclusion. The sun had risen above the land when Lot entered Zor. Yahweh, the ever-living, then rained upon Sodom and upon Amaraha lightning and fire from Yahweh, the ever-living, from the skies, and overwhelmed those towns, them and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the towns, and the produce of the land. Did you notice that strange picture there, that there are 2 Yahwehs here, apparently? It says Yahweh, who is, remember now, Yahweh is on the earth with Abraham. Abraham is asleep in his tent at this point. Yahweh is walking around. He's close to Sodom, and he rains upon Sodom fire from Yahweh, the ever-living, in the skies. So there's another bit of a puzzle right there. But his covenant woman, from following after him, looked back with respect, and so she will exist as a pillar of salt. What does it say here in the KJV? Let me see here. She looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. So Pamela was able to pull out here from the Paleo this idea that she will continue to exist as a pillar of salt. We see that in Jasher. We see that in other accounts. I'm not showing you tonight. I've shown you in the past in multiple places that you can see on pilgrimage maps, medieval pilgrimage maps, that during the Middle Ages, people would go to look at Lot's wife as a pillar of salt. And I believe it is the same one that is over the Dead Sea today that you can go look. She's like a 12 or 13 footer, a giant. And people scoff at that today because they're like, oh, yeah, Lot's wife was 12 feet tall. Yeah, well, they were all bigger back then, right? And when Abraham went in the daybreak to the place where he stood before Adonijah, I think that this is such a haunting scene. And for me, this is the picture of total judgment, according to the Hebrew worldview. He's in his tent. He probably hears this, right? I don't know if he slept all night. He's in his tent. It's nighttime. He's in bed and he hears the judgment. It had to be like way louder than firecrackers. I mean, you're hearing these things whistling down and boosh. And it had to sound like, like an atomic bomb probably went off. And to run off, and maybe the sun had just risen on the horizon. It says daybreak here, so I don't know if that's maybe like the darkness is left. The sun hasn't hit the horizon yet, but there's a light in the air. You guys know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's what's going on, but I imagine him running, and he could see the smoke of their torment rising up to the heavens. It's just big black, this thick cloud of smoke. The smoke of their torment rising, and he could look down there and he could know the names. I mean, his heart has to be broken here because he knows all of his relatives, through Lot and his nephews and nieces and grandnieces and nephews and cousins and all these people down here who he loves. He knows their birth dates and everything, and they're dead, and he's just mourning over them. He looked out towards Sodom and Amorah, and towards all the land of the plain. He saw and perceived a stench. That would be the sulfur, right? Oh man, that had to be like nasty smell. Like almost want to like maybe puke or something, like he perceived a stench and smoke rise up from the country like the smoke from a furnace. Thus it was that Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain. But Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot beyond the reach of the destruction with which he destroyed those towns wherein Lot had settled to dwell. And Lot went up from Zor and remained in the hills along with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to stay in Zor. So he dwelt in a cave along with his 2 daughters. Now, this is never really what made too much sense to me. People make this out like, he thought the world had come to an end. And so, naturally, when you hear like, like a woman is so appalled by man, the man, hitting on her, and she's like, well, not if you were the last man on earth. Well, apparently Lot's daughters didn't have that standard exactly. But they just came from a city where there were people there. And I'm not exactly sure on why they were afraid of the people there, why they felt the need to flee the city. But it does go to show, I think, that city was supposed to be destroyed. And it was kind of a waste that they went there, and they didn't need to. Anyways, he dwelt in a cave along with his 2 daughters. Wouldn't that be creepy if this cave was actually Qumran? I know there's a lot of caves out there. And the elder said to the younger, our father grows old, and there is not a man in the Arats or the earth to come to us as others do all over the world. Come on, let us make our father drunk with wine and lie down with him, so that offspring may exist from our father. So they made their father drunk with wine that night. Did they really think, though, that he was the last man on earth? Because it just said they came from a city. So they made their father drunk with wine that night, and the elder went and lay with her father, but he was not aware of the fact when she lay down or when she rose up. It was sometime, that has to be pretty drunk, like vomit on his face, drunk, to be like blacked out like that. It was some time afterwards that the elder said to the younger, see, I went with my father the other night. Now we will make him drunk with wine also tonight. Can you imagine his hangover? And they're like convincing him to get that drunk again, have to go through the whole thing again. He has to be like so miserable. And it may be that offspring will exist from our father. So she gave their father wine to drink that night also. And the younger rose and went with him. And he knew not when she lay down or when she arose. Thus, both of the daughters of Lot conceived from their father. I guess he raised his daughters real well there in the Sodom public school education. They had some great morals. Anyways, that's both of fertile Myrtle here, both of his daughters. That's both of the daughters of Lot conceived from their father. Then the elder gave birth to a son, and she called his name Moab. He was the ancestor of Moab of today. And the younger also gave birth to a son, and she called his name, what was his name? In Benami, or in the Paleo, Ban Amea. He was the ancestor of the children of Ammon today, or the Banuya Amawan of today. All right. So I'm not going to make it tonight. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to make it. I'm having too much fun. I hope you guys are too. Let's talk about Sodom's sins in the book of Jasher. I'm going to try to read through this as quickly as I can. No commentary. Just listen to the reading of scripture. In those days, all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and of the whole 5 cities were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Yahweh, and they provoked Yahweh with their abominations, and they strengthened in aging abominably and scornfully before Yahweh, and their wickedness and crimes were in those days great before Yahweh. You know what? I'm going to give you commentary. Remember when we read in Genesis 6 where he shortened the years of man's life because it said they're exceeding wickedness. So it's saying the same thing here. Even though their days are now shortened to about 120 years, they're still getting more wicked as they grow older. So he's going to have to shorten the years again to 80 or 70 or whatever. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, about a half a day's walk. And in it, there were fountains of water and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people, Sodom and Amaraha, went there 4 times in the year with their women and children and all belonging to them. And they rejoiced there with timbrels and dances. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all rise and lay hold of their neighbors' women, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his woman and daughter in the hands of his neighbor and did not say a word. And they did so from morning to night. And they afterward returned home, each man to his house and each woman to her tent. So they always did 4 times in the year. And when a stranger came into their cities and brought goods which he had purchased with a view to dispose of there, the people of these cities would assemble men, women, and children, young and old, and go to the man and take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until there was an end to all the goods of the owner which he had brought into the land. You would think, by this point, word would get out and nobody would want to go anywhere near Sodom and Gomorrah. And if the owner of the goods quarreled with them, saying, "What is this work which you have done to me?" then they would approach to him one by one, and each would show him the little which he took and taught him, saying, "I only took that little which you did give me." And when he heard this from them all, he would arise and go from them in sorrow and bitterness of soul, when they would all arise and go after him, and drive him out of the city with great noise and tumult. And there was a man from the country of Ialam, who was leisurely going on the road, seated upon his ass, which carried a fine mantle of diverse colors, and the mantle was bound with a cord upon the ass. And the man was on his journey, passing through the street of Sodom when the sun set in the evening, and he remained there in order to abide during the night. But no one would let him into his house. And at that time there was in Sodom a wicked and mischievous man, one skillful to do evil, and his name was Hadad. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the street of the city, and he came to him and said, "Whence come you, and whither do you go?" And the man said to him, "I am traveling from Hebron to Elam, where I belong. And as I passed the sunset, and no one would suffer me to enter his house, though I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my ass, and am short of nothing." And Hadad answered and said to him, "All that you shall want shall be supplied by me, but in the street you shall not abide all night." And Hadad brought him to his house, and he took off the mantle from the ass with the cord, and brought them to his house. And he gave the ass straw and provender, while the traveler ate and drank in Hadad's house, and he abode there that night. And in the morning the traveler rose up early to continue his journey, when Hadad said to him, "Wait, comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and then go." And the man did so, and he remained with him. And they both ate and drank together during the day, when the man rose up to go. And Hadad said to him, "Behold, now the day is declining. You had better remain all night, that your heart may be comforted." And he pressed him so that he tarried there all night. And on the second day, he rose up early to go away, when Hedad pressed him, saying, comfort your heart with a morsel of bread and then go. And he remained and ate with him also the second day. And then the man rose up to continue his journey. And Hedad said to him, behold, now the day is declining. Remain with me to comfort your heart, and in the morning rise up early and go your way. And the man would not remain, but rose and saddled his ass. And while he was saddling his ass, the woman of Hedad said to her husband, behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking, and he has given us nothing. And now shall he go away from us without giving anything? And Hedad said to her, be silent. And the man saddled his ass to go, and he asked Hedad to give him the cord and mantle to tie it upon the ass. And Hedad said to him, what sayest you? And he said to him, that you, my lord, or Adoniah, shall give me the cord and the mantle made with diverse colors, which you did conceal with you in your house to take care of it. And Hedad answered the man, saying, this is the interpretation of your dream. The cord which you did see means that your life will be lengthened out like a cord, and having seen the mantle colored with all sorts of colors means that you shall have a vineyard in which you will plant trees of all fruits. And the traveler answered and saying, that not so, my Adoniah. I wasn't dreaming, for I was awake when I gave you the cord and also a mantle woven with different colors. So he's being totally gaslit now. Which you did take off the ass to put them by for me. And Hedad answered and said, surely I have told you the interpretation of your dream, and it is a good dream, and this is the interpretation thereof. Now the sons of men give me 4 pieces of silver, which is my charge for interpreting dreams, and of you only I require 3 pieces of silver. Well, that's nice. He's, like a good gypsy, he's giving him a bargain. And the man was provoked at the words of Hedad, and he cried bitterly. And he brought Hedad to Sirach, judge of Sodom. Probably not a good idea, because the judge is going to be even more corrupt. And the man laid his cause before Sirach the judge, when Hedad replied, saying, it is not so, but thus the matter stands. And the judge said to the traveler, this man Hedad tells you truth, for he is famed in the cities for the accurate interpretation of dreams. And the man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, not so, my Adoniah, for it was in the day that I gave him the cord and mantle which was upon the ass, in order to put them by in his house. And they both disputed before the judge, the one saying, thus the matter was, and the other declaring otherwise. And Hedad said to the man, give me 4 pieces of silver that I charge for my interpretation of dreams. I will not make any allowance, and give me the expense of the 4 meals that you did eat in my house. And the man said to Hedad, truly, I will pay you for what I ate in your house. Only give me the cord and mantle which you did conceal in your house. And Hedad replied before the judge and said to the man, did I not tell you the interpretation of your dream? The cord means that your days shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle that you will have a vineyard in which you will plant all kinds of fruit trees. Now, forgive me for my language here, but Hedad is an ass. It's just like, I could use worse words, but like, what a jerk. This is the proper interpretation of your dream. Now give me the 4 pieces of silver that I require as a compensation, for I will make you no allowance. And the man cried at the words of Hedad, and they both quarreled before the judge. And the judge gave orders to his servants, who drove them rashly from the house. And they went away quarreling from the judge when the people of Sodom heard them, and they gathered about them, and they exclaimed against the stranger, and they drove him rashly from the city. And the man continued his journey upon his ass with bitterness of soul, lamenting and weeping. And while he was going along, he wept at what happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. But it gets worse, way worse than that. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges to 4 cities, and these were their names: Sirach in the name of Sodom, Sharkad. So we met Sirach, Sharkad in Amaraha, Zabnak in Adamaha, and Minan in Zabayam. And Eliezer, Abraham's servant, this would be Eliezer, applied to them different names. And he converted Sirach to Shakra, Sharkad to Shakrura, Zebnak to Kizilbim, and Minan to Matzlodin. And by desire of their four judges, the people of Sodom and Amaraha had beds erected in the streets of the city. So this is what we need to pay attention to right here, why the angels wanted to stay in the beds in the streets of the cities. They had heard this report and they came to see if it was true. They want to see what would happen if the same thing would happen to them. And remember, what happened to them was actually far worse than what we're going to read here. And if a man came to these places, they laid hold of him and brought him to one of their beds, and by force made him to lie in them. And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head and 3 at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if the man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end, and when he cried out to them, they would not answer him. And if he was longer than the bed, they would draw together the 2 sides of the bed at each end, until the man had reached the gates of death. And if he continued to cry out to them, they would answer him, saying, Thus shall it be done to a man that cometh into our land. And when men heard all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. That's probably, wise. I don't know what was keeping Lot there. And when a poor man came to their land, they would give him silver and gold and cause a proclamation in the whole city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death, all the people of the city would come and take their silver and gold, which they had given to him. And those that could recognize the silver and gold, which they had given him, took it back. And at his death, they also stripped him of his garments, and they would fight about them. And he that prevailed over his neighbor took them. That sounds like a funeral from hell. They would after that carry him and bury him under some of the shrubs in the deserts. So they did all the days to anyone that came to them and died in their land. So here we see the Torah being broken on multiple levels, but here they're not even burying the dead, which is like in the Torah, you got to bury the dead. And in the course of time, Sharaha sent Eliezer to Sodom to see Lot inquire after his welfare. And Eliezer went to Sodom, and he met a man of Sodom fighting with the stranger. And the man of Sodom stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. And this poor man cried to Eliezer and supplicated his favor on account of what the man of Sodom had done to him. And he said to him, Why do you act thus to the poor man who came to your land? And the man of Sodom answered Eliezer, saying, Is this man your brother, or have the people of Sodom made you a judge this day that you speak about this man? And Eliezer strove with the man of Sodom on account of the poor man. And when Eliezer approached to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sodom, he hastened and with a stone smote Eliezer in the forehead, which is, of course, what Cain did to Abel. Luckily, Eliezer doesn't die here. And the blood flowed copiously from Eliezer's forehead. And when the man saw the blood, he caught hold of Eliezer, saying, Give me my hire for having rid you of this bad blood that was in your forehead. For such is the custom and the law in our land. And, maybe that's one of the key phrases here, right? The law in our land. When the law in itself becomes the abomination. And Eliezer said to him, You have wounded me and require me to pay you your hire. And Eliezer would not hearken to the words of the man of Sodom. And the man laid hold of Eliezer and brought him to Shakra, the judge of Sodom, for judgment. Not this guy again. And the man spoke to the judge, saying, I beseech you, my Adonai, thus has this man done, for I smote him with a stone, that the blood flowed from his forehead, and he is unwilling to give me my hire. And the judge said to Eliezer, This man speaks truth to you. Give him his hire, for this is the custom in our land. And Eliezer heard the words of the judge, and he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. He must have learned this from Abraham with the idols, with his father's idols. Let me read that to you again. And he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. Oh, irony. And the stone struck on his forehead, and the blood flowed copiously from the forehead of the judge. I guess love others as they want to be loved, right? I guess maybe that's the lesson there. I don't really know. And Eliezer said, If this then is the custom in your land, give you unto this man what I should have given him. For this has been your decision. You did decree it. And Eliezer left the man of Sodom with the judge, and he went away. And when the kings of Elam had made war with the kings of Sodom, this was a couple weeks ago, the kings of Elam captured all the property of Sodom, and they took Lot captive with his property. I'm going to skip that for lack of time. A poor man came into the city to seek a maintenance, and he remained in the city some days. And all the people of Sodom caused a proclamation of their custom not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat until he dropped dead upon the earth, and they did so. And Peltith, the daughter of Lot, saw this man lying in the street, starved with hunger, and no one would give him anything to keep him alive, and he was just upon the point of death. And her soul was filled with pity on account of the man, and she fed him secretly with bread for many days, and the soul of this man was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the bread in the water pitcher, and when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it to him to eat. So she did many days. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah wondered how this man could bear starvation for so many days. And they said to each other, this can only be that he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for so many days or live as this man has without even his countenance changing. And 3 men concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed to know who it was that brought him bread to eat. Some interesting contrast here. There's 3 men concealing to spy out, to find the mole in Sodom. And then, of course, 3 men go from heaven to spy out Sodom. And I probably did you a disservice in skipping that line there with the war with Sodom and Gomorrah, because, amongst all this, like the sickness, this disease, it's interesting that Abraham gives all their property back to them, even though he knows he's received the news from Eliezer, what they did. And he's hearing these terrible reports, and he just gave all their possessions back. He's like, look, you stole all this, is not yours, but I get, here you go. Kind of handing them back to the desires of their heart, I guess. So this is after that event now. And Peltith, daughter of Lot, went forth that day to fetch water, and she put bread into her pitcher of water. And she went to draw water by the poor man's place, and she took out the bread from the pitcher and gave it to the poor man, and he ate it. And the 3 men saw what Peltith did to the poor man, and they said to her, it is you then who have supported him, and therefore has he not starved, nor changed in appearance, nor died like the rest. And the 3 men went out of the place in which they were concealed, and they seized Peltith and the bread which was in the poor man's hand. Of course, take the bread from the poor man, right? And they took Peltith and brought her before their judges, and they said to them, thus did she do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore did he not die all this time. Now therefore declare to us the punishment due to this woman for having transgressed our law. There you go. There's the theme verse again. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city. So, how, this really is like how you judge is how you will be judged. It's interesting, right? So we're going to see a righteous woman, Lot's daughter. I'm giving it away if you don't know this text. She is burned alive in actually a horrific fashion. And so Yahuwah personally hears this report, and he's like, okay, that's how they roll. I'll repay them the same way, I guess. And they took the woman and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes. And in the city of Adamaha, there was a woman to whom they did the like. For a traveler came into the city of Adamaha to abide there all night, with the intention of going home in the morning. And he sat opposite the door of the house of the young woman's father to remain there, as the sun had set when he had reached that place. And the young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house, and he asked her for a drink of water. And she said to him, who are you? And he said to her, I was this day going on the road and reached here when the sun set, so I will abide here all night, and in the morning I will arise early and continue my journey. And the young woman went into the house and fetched the man bread and water to eat and drink. And this affair became known to the people of Adamaha, and they assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act. And the judge said, the judgment of death must pass upon this woman, because she transgressed our law. There's the 3rd time we've seen that, I think, if I'm counting correctly. And this, therefore, is the decision concerning her. And And the people of those cities assembled and brought out the young woman and anointed her with honey from head to foot, as the judge had decreed. And they placed her before a swarm of bees, which were there then in their hives. And the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body was swelled. And the young woman cried out on account of the bees, but no one took notice of her or pitied her. And here it is right here. And her cries ascended to heaven. And Yahuwah was provoked at this and at all the works of the cities of Sodom, for they had abundance of food and had tranquility amongst them, and still would not sustain the poor and the needy. And in those days, their evil doings and sins became great before Yahuwah. So here we see, in this way, the wickedness here is the complete opposite of who Yahuwah is, right? So they had wealth, and it wasn't enough. And they had to make the poor poorer to the point of death and torture. And they had to pass their laws, to make it impossible for anyone who is righteous to take care of them. That comes from Yasher. For lack of time, I'm going to skip Sodom's sins and the writings of Abraham. It just gives the same kind of verification, second witness to Jasher. It tells those stories there. All right, let's keep reading. Chapter 20. And again, so we're seeing a lot of contrast in this Torah portions. And this is really interesting because we just saw the child of promise. We saw Yitzhak. At least the child of Yitzhak proclaimed. At the same time, all the nations are going to come through Isaac, and yet Sodom and Gomorrah is losing their inheritance. They're being cut off. And then we see this instance with Abimelech right afterwards. It seems like a really strange story to be inserted in here, but when you take it in all this context, it makes a lot of sense. So chapter 20. Abraham then removed quietly from there landward and settled between Kudash and the wall and resided in Gerar. I guess there was no one left to minister to, right? So he had to go somewhere else. And as Abraham said of Sharaha, his covenant woman, she is my sister, Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took her for himself, Sharaha. Allahayam, however, came to Abimelech in a dream at night and said, beware of death, because this woman whom you have taken, she is another man's covenant woman. But Abimelech had not made advances to her. So he replied, my Adon, would you kill a just person? Has not this man said to me, she is my sister? And did not she herself say to me, he is my brother? In the honesty of my heart and in the innocence of my hand, I have done this. And then Allahayam said to him in a dream, I also know that in the honesty of your heart have you done this. So I restrained you. I also warned you from sin against me. Therefore, I did not permit you to reach out to touch her. So now, restore to the man his covenant woman, for he is a chief prophet who works life, and he will intercede for you. But if you do not return her, know that you shall certainly die, and all that you have. When Abimelech awoke in the morning, he called his ministers and related in their hearing the whole of these events. And the men were greatly afraid. Now, I know that in the Jasher account, that is not in canon, or at least it's not in Genesis, but it is interesting that the man who was the dream interpreter, right, the official dream interpreter of Sodom, the dude who came in, he didn't have a dream. It was broad daylight. He gave him the saddle for his ass. And the man who was an ass, claimed, oh, you gave me that in a dream and let me interpret it for you. And it's kind of interesting then to see like the next story over here. Again, recognizing that that's Jasher, this is Genesis. But here we're actually seeing Yahuwah come to a man in a dream and telling him to repent. And I don't have time to go through this with you guys this week, but Abimelech, just like Pharaoh, in both counts, according to the writings of Abraham, they became righteous men. And Abimelech actually goes to the celebration of Yitzhak's birth. Abimelech consequently called Abraham and asked him, what have you done to us? And what have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom this great danger for acts they have not done? You have done us a wrong. And Abimelech continued to say to Abraham, what have you seen that you have done this thing? And Abraham replied, I said that perhaps there is no fear of Allahayam in this place, and they will kill me on account of my covenant woman. And indeed, she is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not of my mother. And she was given to me for a covenant woman. But when Allahayam caused me to be a wanderer from my father's house, then I said to her, this is the kindness which you shall show me in every place where we come. Say I am your brother. Abimelech, however, took sheep, oxen, slaves, and girls, and gave to Abraham. And he returned Sharahah, his covenant woman, to him. Did you guys know that there's actually two Abimelechs? Of course, you could see the root word in there, Melech, right? There's a father and son of Abimelech, showing that it's a title. And he returned Sharahah, his covenant woman, to him. And Abimelech said, see, my country is before you. Stay wherever it is good for your eyes. While to Sharahah he said, I have given 1,000 gifts to this brother of yours, for he must be a covering of the eyes to all who are with you, and to all who meet you. Then Abraham appealed for Abimelech to Allahayam, and Allahayam made the woman of Abimelech fruitful, and his servants as well, and they gave birth to children, because Yahweh the ever-living had sterilized those of the household of Abimelech on account of Sharahah, the covenant woman of Abraham. Man, like this is like serious business here. Like Yahweh is seriously trying to create a nation, and like everyone has the hots for Sarah. I don't mean that like in a vulgar way, like, but literally they do, right? Like everyone is trying to get her. Now we see a complete contrast here with Sodom and Gomorrah, because I reckon that if the same thing happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, let's say like a dude stole Sarah, took her as his own, and I'm just assuming here, but from everything we read, if Yahweh personally went to that person in a dream and be like, keep away from her, I don't think he would listen. I really don't. And Abimelech was wise enough to be like, yeah, whatever you want, you got it. All right, the birth of Yitzhak, or the promise fulfilled in Yitzhak, chapter 21. Yahweh the ever-living afterwards effected with Sharahah what he had promised. And Yahweh did for Sharahah that which he had said. And Sharahah conceiving gave birth to a son to Abraham in his old age, in the way that Allahayam had promised him. I mean, look at all the wording there, guys. You guys can see this how you want. My personal perspective, and I could be wrong, is that Abraham had nothing to do with the conception of this child. It was done in a way that Allahayam had promised him. It's like was it the same way that every other child comes into the world? I mean, then why phrase it that way? Abraham accordingly gave the son born to him by Sharahah the name of Yitzhak. And Abraham circumcised Yitzhak on the 8th day, as Allahayam had instructed him. And Abraham was then 100 years old when his son Yitzhak was born to him. Sharahah then declared, Allahayam has made a delight for me, for he has made me suckle children, for I have borne a son to his age. And then she continued, for Abraham I am a flowing brook. He has made me suckle children, for I have borne a son to his age. When the lad grew and was weaned, Abraham celebrated the weaning of Yitzhak with a great feast. Sharahah also saw the son which Hagar, the Mitzrayim woman, had borne to Abraham, conspicuously making sport of Yitzhak. So don't let that pass you by here. Let me read this in the KJV, what it says. Hagar the Egyptian, which she had born unto Abraham. So Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had born unto Abraham, mocking. So according to Pamela's translation, he's doing more than mocking here. And what she was able to pull out of the Paleo matches what we see in other texts, which I'll read to you. Conspicuously making sport of Yitzhak. So we know that he was a expert archer, and so it appears that he's taking shots, both figuratively and literally. He is mocking him, is taking shots at him, but he's literally taking shots at him. And he said to Abraham, or she said to Abraham, Drive out my maid and her son, for the son of the slave shall not be an inheritor with my son Yitzchak. But in Abraham's view, this speech was very hurtful in regard to his son. I mean, she's taken back now, right? Like she said, this will be our son. And so Abraham's like, okay, this is my son, right? And now he's got Yitzchak, and that's a joy, but he still loves Ishmael. But Allahayam declared unto Abraham, do not be broken in your eyes. Do all that Shraha has said against the lad and against his mother. Listen to what she says. For from Yitzchak, I will call out an heir to you. Man, it seems like Abraham he's really still holding on to Eliezer. He's still really holding on to Ishmael. He can't let this go. It's like he's still learning lessons, I think. He's obviously faithful, right? Abraham was obedient to faithfulness. No doubt about that. But he's still human, right? And I guess maybe a way to phrase this is that he's still learning how. It's one thing to say, I want, salvation comes through Yahuwah alone. Okay, that's one thing. But then it's another to learn how to let salvation come through Yahuwah alone. He's still trying to figure this out. And also, from the son of your female slave, I will found a great nation, for he is your seed. Abraham accordingly rose up at dawn, and taking bread and a skin of water, he placed them on the shoulder of Hagar and the lad and sent her away. And she went and wandered in the desert of Bera Shaba. What is it? How does it pronounce here in the KJV? Can't find it. That's okay. When the water in the skin was exhausted, however, she placed the lad under a bush and went and seated herself on the other side, for she said, I shall not see the lad's death. So she rested on the other side, and she raised her voice and wept. And Allahayam then heard the voice of the youth. And Malak Allahayam called from Ha-Shamayam to Hagar and said to her, what, Hagar? What's the matter? Be not afraid, for Allahayam has heard the voice of the lad from where he is. Arise, take the lad and support him, for I will make him a great nation. Then Allahayam opened her eyes, and she saw a spring of water, and she gave the lad a drink. You have to wonder if the spring of water was there the whole time. Thus Allahayam gave life to the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the desert and became a mighty archer. There it is right there. And settled in the desert of Pharaon. And she took a woman for him from the land of Mitzrayim. It's clear that she still sees herself, very much in the identity of an Egyptian. I think it was last week that I mentioned that she, according to what Pamela's pulled out of the translation, she believes that she identified Yahuwah as Ra. And that was her mistake. It's not saying Moses is really saying that Yahuwah is the same God as Ra, but she didn't really see the difference. She's like, yeah, you must be Ra. So she was never able to give up her homeland, the gods of her homeland, even though her father did, according to the writings of Abraham. If you want to take that account, he became a Melchizedek priest, or entered the order for that matter. Abraham's treaty with Abimelech. It was about this time that Abimelech and Phaiakol, the commander of his army, addressed Abraham, saying, Allahayam is with you in all that you do. So now take an oath to me before Allahayam, that you may not deceive, and to my children and posterity, that the kindness which I have shown to you, you will show to me, and to the land where you have been a foreigner. And Abraham replied, I will take the oath. Abraham then reproved Abimelech about the affair of the well of water, which the servants of Abimelech had stolen. And then Abimelech answered, I did not myself know of that matter, and neither did you report it to me, and I never heard of it until today. Abraham then took sheep and oxen and gave to Abimelech, and the two entered into a treaty. Abimelech then asked Abraham, what are these 7 lambs for which you have put by themselves? You take these 7 lambs from my hand, he answered, that they may be evidence for me that I have dug this well. They accordingly called the place Bera Sheba, the well of the oath, and he entered into a treaty at the well of the oath with both Abimelech and Phaiakol, the commander of the army. And then they returned to the land of the Phalathuyam, or the Philistines. They also planted tamarisk trees by the well of the oath, and there on the name of Yahweh Al-A-Yolam, the ever-living eternal Al. So Abraham remained in the land of the Philistines, or the Phala Thuyam, for many days. So one of the interesting things that Sarah did here was, did she invoke the code of Hammurabi? The code of Hammurabi comes out of Babylon. It is considered to be, I don't know if it's still considered to be, for the longest time, it was considered to be like the oldest law on earth, at least the recorded that we have. And it may still be, I'm not really sure. They're just discovering so many things nowadays that, I can never keep up with it all. That's why I say that, or preface it in that way. This is what it says in Yashar 21. And Yishmael came to Yitzchak and seated himself opposite to him. And he took the bow and drew it and put the arrow in it and intended to slay Yitzchak. So apparently it said later on he became a great archer. Maybe he wasn't the greatest archer at this time. He obviously missed his target. Nevertheless, Sharaha sees it, the act which Yishmael desired to do to her son Yitzchak, and it grieved her exceedingly on account of her son. And she sent for Abraham and said to him, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for her son shall not be heir with my son, for thus did he seek to do unto him this day. Man, it's just like Genesis 3 and 4 is being repeated over and over again, isn't it? We're going to see the same thing with Esau and Yaakov in the coming weeks. Allahayam, or Yahweh, is trying to plant his kingdom upon the earth, and Satan is always there trying to usurp it any way he can, through murder, adultery, stealing, theft. So this is what the code of Hammurabi actually says, in the instance that Sharaha approaches Abraham, and it appears like she's invoking this. And this is what it says: if a man take a wife and she bear him no children, and he intend to take another wife, so that's what she already did. She's like, look, I can't bear you a son, so why don't you take another wife? If he take the second wife and bring her into the house, which Abraham did through Hagar, this second wife shall not be allowed equality with his wife. All right. So Sarah, Sharaha, would clearly know that Hagar is still in command. Like, she's not giving up the fact that Hagar is still a maidservant to her, even though she's a second wife to Abraham. Verse 146 of the Code of Hammurabi: if a man take a wife and she give this man a maidservant as wife, and she bear him children, so Hagar did, and then this maid assume equality with the wife, which she cannot do, because she has borne him children, her master shall not sell her for money, but he may keep her as a slave, reckoning her among the maid servants. It is a thought. Maybe she did or didn't, but the Code of Hammurabi would have been so well known all through Canaan, coming all the way out of Babylon, probably into Egypt. It was probably so renowned and standard for the day for Sharaha to invoke this. And, I guess, the thing is I haven't studied the Code of Hammurabi out. I've never read it on this channel. I do have my own translation of it. I've read much of it. I have not read, I've read all of it in the sense of translating, but I haven't studied it, if you know what I mean. So I can't say whether, there are good laws and bad laws in here, if there's just laws or unjust laws, but this one seems pretty straightforward. I'll give it that, I would agree with this. Moving on, the trial of Abraham's faith. This is going to be the last chapter of tonight's Torah portion. We're coming up at the close of the second hour. After these events, Allahayam tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he replied, I am here. Then he said, take your son, your peculiar one, whom you love, Yitzchak, and go to the land of vision and offer him there as a burnt offering upon one of the hills, which I will point out to you. When Abraham woke in the morning, he saddled his ass and took 2 youths along with him. And we know that, according to the Aramaic Targum and also Jasher, these 2 of these men, these 2 youths, to quote my cousin Vinny, that came with him were Yitzchak and Eliezer. which is interesting because these are the two men who were going to inherit everything, and now they are watching the inheritance about to potentially get sacrificed. And he took Yitzchak his son and split up wood for a sacrifice, and they rose up and went to the place where Abraham had told him. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the spot some distance off. Abraham said to his attendants, "Stay here by yourselves with the ass, and the lad and I will go and bow down, do homage, and all will then return to you." Abraham accordingly took the wood for the sacrifice and placed it upon Yitzchak his son, and took in his own hand the fire and the knife, and the two went together. Yitzchak then said to Abraham his father, "My father," and he replied, "I am here, my son." "There is fire and wood," he said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" "Allah Hayam," answered Abraham, "will provide a lamb of himself for a burnt offering, my son." So they went on together. When they came to the place that Allaham commanded him, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood, and bound Yitzchak his son, and laid him upon the altar upon the top of the wood. And then Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But Malach Yahuwah, the ever-living, called to him from Hashamayam, the place of the names, and said to him, "Abraham, Abraham." And he replied, "I am here." And then Yahuwah says, "Stretch not your hand against the young man," he said, "nor do to him what you intended. For now I know that you reverence Allahayam and would not withhold from me your son, your special one." Abraham then looked up and saw a goat caught in a bush by its horns. So Abraham went and took the goat and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham therefore called the name of the place Yahuwah Yerah-Aha, or Yahuwah he will provide. And then Malach Yahuwah the ever-living called again to Abraham from Shamayam and said to him, "I promise," Yahuwah declares, "that because you have done this thing and have not held back your special son, that when I barak, I will barak you. And when increasing, I will increase your race as the stars of the skies and like the sand upon the seashore. And your race shall possess the gates of its enemies. And I will benefit all the nations of the earth through your heir, because you have listened to my voice." Abraham afterwards returned to his attendants, and they rose up and went back to the well of the oath. After these events, a message was delivered to Abraham. "Your sister Malakaha has given birth to children to, that would be Nahor, or Nakawar, your brother, to Huz, or Aetz, and his brother Baaz, and to Kuma-Yual, the father of Aram, and Kashad, and Hazawa, and Faladash, and Yadalaf, and Bathuel has produced Rabukuha. These 8 Malakaha has born to Nahor, your brother, and his second woman, whose name is, what is her name? Rama. She has also given birth to Tabak, and Gaham, and Thukash, and Maakaha. And that's kind of how it ends right there. It's kind of interesting that, I don't know, he gets these declarations of the birth of all these children after this event. Because of the lack of time, and this happens every year. I'm sorry to do this to you. I really wanted to read. I like to keep these at 2 hours for just your sanity, for all of our sanity. And I'm just amazed that, some people give me 2 hours a week out of their life. Thank you for coming back week after week. You are so appreciated. And thank you for supporting this ministry and keeping us afloat. Without you, I couldn't do this. So I might have done this last time too. Actually picked up on this for the following Torah portions, because I hate to miss out on this, because it's a powerful passage when you read through Yeshar and the writings of Abraham, and it tells about the actual journey to the sacrificial point and the temptation that happened with Satan, and of course how Sarah perished. So I might pick up on that next week. Anyways, yeah, so I dropped this on you guys today. It's early morning on the East Coast and West Coast. Yeah, it's still almost 11 o'clock on the East Coast right now. And hopefully you guys have a good preparation day, good Sabbath whenever you guys keep your Sabbath. Love you guys. Yah willing, I will do this again next week. I have full intent to give the Torah portions uninterrupted the next 2 weeks. I'm letting you guys know, though, I'm boarding a ship. I'm in Barcelona, and I will be at sea for 2 weeks. So who knows what kind of Wi-Fi signals I can pick up out there in the middle of the ocean. I will try my best. See you guys. I'm going to keep you guys on your toes for the next week. You're not going to know if I'm going to be on or not, because I'm not going to even know. I'll be on my toes too. Good night, everybody. Love you guys.
Hey guys, Paleo here, and I just want to let you know you have the opportunity to be awesome. How can you be awesome, you ask? Well, by supporting our work in the ministry, by going to the links below here and saying, you know what, I would like to see the entire Paleo Hebrew Bible come out, and I want to see all these other Bibles and books and works that Noel's doing and have them edited, and we're doing that by supporting Pam and Rebecca and also the rest of everybody else. So please go below and pray. Say, you know what should I do? Should I give $1? Should I give nothing? Should I just pray harder? Should I give $5,000? Whatever he directs you to do, let's do that. Have a good day. Bye.